Piccadilly. My dad used to let us come here on those special occasions, which is about once a month. He'd give my mom a break. But he always, and I didn't understand this deal, but he would say whoever had the smallest ticket would get to sit up front with him. And I won every time. And when I got older, I figured this was a scam. And there it was. And so anyway, but my dad was in the Lions Club about 53 years. Mike and I grew up with our dads in the West Monroe Lions Club way back yonder. And in fact, me and Steve Taylor were talking about Lions Club just a couple of days ago about the good times we had. You know, you just look back and again, we probably have done a poor job with our kids in trying to get them to that service and trying to make sure that they believe service is duty, not just something that you do once in a blue moon, that it is the duty of being citizens of this great country that you give back. And we probably have done a very poor job in getting our kids, that's the next generation that comes through. But we'll talk a little bit about the state, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on locally, and then we'll go wherever you would like to go. Real quickly, I told Rich when I was coming in, I saw my dad's old vest, and he got, I'm sure I can remember that was the only time we ever went on vacation was to go to the national convention once a year. You know, as a business person, they didn't, you know, you just didn't take off like they do these days. And so anyway, I'm sure I'd have to go back and see what some of those dates of those pins are. You know, we at this state, we've had a lot in these last 8 years that's gone on. We had just, when we got into office, Katrina just happened. We just had the 10th anniversary of Katrina. Of course, Rita came in right after that, about a month later, destroyed the southwest end. So we were really, as this administration was coming in, had those kind of things out there. And at first, it devastated it, but of course, afterwards, as we all know, the insurance payments and federal government came in, and we had a lot of money that was coming and flowing through the state of Louisiana as we tried to rebuild. I'm on the Joint Budget Committee. At least once a month, we have a Katrina project that's still wallowing out there. And we sort of laugh and say that when our kids take over, we'll be still talking about those Katrina projects that we haven't done or that we're in the middle of. So, but it really made a big change to our state. Baton Rouge is now the powerhouse where it used to be New Orleans, because New Orleans lost a lot of population. Some of those came up to Baton Rouge, but Baton Rouge is now a real focal powerhouse. You'll always still have the tourism in New Orleans. But we've got some structural problems with our state. We've gotten rid of some of the things that were some ails that we had. As you know, our charity hospital system was one of a kind. Nobody else had a statewide charity hospital. And then about 4 years ago, when the federal government came in and said they were going to cut $1 billion out of our Medicaid budget, we started going down that road and privatized that healthcare system, just like every other state was doing. That allowed us to we probably now have about, when we walked in 8 years ago, we had the most state employees per capita of any state in the United States. We're now down to probably around Edwin Edwards' numbers, and probably have lost about a little over about 25,000 state employees that we used to have. So we've shrunk state government, still doing most of the same things. I know in this room we're all talking about higher education and where we're at with that. And this year's budget was a budget proposal to cut higher education by $700 million. I think most of us believe we just could not do that. $700 million cut to higher education, you would have probably lost 2 out of the 4 four-year universities along I-20. You would have lost LSU Ag totally in this state. And we just felt like that was not the right thing to do at this particular time. Do we have 14 statewide, four-year universities? Yeah, we do. but we should try to make those centers of excellence instead of just cutting them at the legs. And that's sort of what we would have done if we'd have gone through that budget proposal. So most of us opposed the governor's proposal, and we just went and we were about $1.5 billion in the hole. We cut about half of that, and the other half was we raised in some taxes. Most of that was on the backs of business with the inventory tax, and that is, as Rich knows, probably one of the craziest taxes you'll ever have, in which the tax assessor will assess our businesses on the inventory that they have. They'll send him a check, and then they'll send us a bill, and the state of Louisiana pay them what they just paid the parish, and it's just as crazy as it can be, and that's just one of the many things that we'll have to talk about over these next 2 or 3 years as we try to figure out where we are with our taxes and what kind of state that we really want. What kind of state do we really want? And right now we have about our state, just the state side of the state budget, which is sales tax, those kind of things that bring in, is about $8 billion. And we also have about the same time about $8 billion in tax credits and rebates and stuff like that are out there. So almost a dollar for dollar that we have. Some of the things that have grown that we've done, movie credits absolutely have grown, and we've had those since Mike Foster's administration. But with that, we're now called the Hollywood of the South, and we fight about that. Is that what we should be giving tax credits out? Do we cut higher education because we want to keep the movie tax credits? But we ought to at least have that debate. And another thing was solar credits. We went down at the very first with a program that would have given basically 75% of your costs would have been rebated by 50% by the state, 25% by the feds. We have now are almost to the end of that program. I think that leaves us in 2017 that we're just going to stop that whole program.
Where do we get the application?
But it's a pretty nice application that you got. But just to think that 75% of the cost is borne by government is not probably where we ought to be. But we ought to have those kind of debates. We ought to have the kind of debate in which we look and see what those tax rebates and credits that we have, and are we getting the kind of bang for our dollar? Is that what we want to do? We did go down the road and tax cigarettes a little bit more. Went up about 50 cents. Some of us wanted to go up $1, but we didn't get to go that way. One lady called me and said, "Look, because you ran up on taxes on cigarettes, it looks like I'll have to quit smoking." I said, "Thank you." At least that's working. So if we get more of that and we lose a few dollars on that, that'd be all right. Oil prices is still just a mystery to us all. I mean, it's not. It was $100 2 years ago. Now we're using $60 a barrel for this year's number, and we're already down even under 40 in a couple of places. It's gone up back a little bit, but for every dollar for the year that we lose, just on severance tax, cost us $12 million to the state budget. So if you lose 10, that's $120 million. So and right now we're probably about $20 dollars short. And so we'll have to go back and look at it again, probably even before January comes through. So
is that a percentage, or how do they?
Well, that's just one, and it's just the severance side that we lose that kind of money on. The other side is what it does to the basically South Louisiana economy, and so it's almost sort of a double whammy when, especially oil gets down this kind of price tag. You would think a lot of people would use those dollars to reinvest in whatever, but if they reinvest in property, that doesn't make a difference with the state. If they pay off their credit cards, that makes no difference with the state. So we haven't really seen a big change in or increase uptick in our sales tax over these last 2 years when they've been low. Yes, sir.
The bad part of it is that they're using that
decrease in gas to travel more, which is wearing out the roads fast.
Well, also what we did, and we have about a $13 billion backlog on our road system, but that's not just Louisiana. Most states have that kind. We don't put back dollars into our infrastructure, whether it's roads or whether it's sewage, whether it's water. We've all seen the water fights over the last several months. We're just not investing in the infrastructure of this country, and we're little by little, we're all finally finding out that we probably should have done that all along. So, but we do these kind of things. I don't know if you'll remember the time program, 4 cents sales tax on gas, or 4 cents a gallon tax on gas, in which we did 165, 4-lane 165, 4-lane 15, now faster to go down to Baton Rouge than ever before. But at the same time, what we didn't do was put any money back for maintenance. So we've got all this road, and then, as you know, you got to have some maintenance going on. I-20 is now at its 50th anniversary of its being there. We already have in Arcadia, we've already had one of the overpasses collapse because it's old. I mean, it's been there since about '64 is when all that really started. I think I-20 came through. So we've got to start investing a little bit back into our infrastructure. TOPS has just been unbelievable in this state. It is a sacred program that is now hitting at about a $300 million program, but I think it really does make a difference in whether our best and brightest stay here or not. And so we can talk about that, but I think most of us want to keep TOPS the way it is. We might put a little bit more strenuous level on our high school, and make sure that the kind of education level that we have. Locally, we're just so that you'll know, there's a guy in South Louisiana, and I'll digress just a slight bit. Over this last session, he said that we should have closed 2 out of 4 universities in North Louisiana along I-20. And I will go ahead and tell you that he was a graduate of ULM and now living in New Orleans, but that's the kind of, that's what we're hearing all over the state is pointing back at us. So I think most of us, I just didn't think that it was the right thing to do, and so if I get hit on raising taxes for our universities, I guess what I do want to leave you with before I leave the state is, if you'll remember, about 7 years ago when we had a lot of influx of cash, we got the Stelly plan, if you'll remember, that took out the sales tax, put it on income tax, and we rescinded the income tax expansion, and so that $400 million that we gave back to the taxpayers. So we did cut taxes when we had a lot of money, but now we probably put ourselves in sort of a hole. We didn't really come out of this like we thought. Ethics-wise, business-wise, just about everything, our state is better than it was 10 years ago. I think we really, used to that we had some pretty lax ethics laws in the state. You can do whatever you really want to do. As we've talked about, I think Billy Tozan used to say, in Louisiana, half of our state is flooded, and the other half is under indictment. And I think the good part about it is that hopefully that has changed what we were doing. So locally, just sort of throw you where we're at on some projects. You've probably seen 165 being 4-lane on the northbound. Just that project alone is going to be a little bit over $10 million. We will finally, after a long time of being sort of roadblocked, we'll do the Kansas City connector. We should start on that next year, but the funding is there by the state, joining with the federal funds that we've had for 20 years, and we're going to go ahead and start moving that direction. I think what you'll see first is probably at the Forsyth area, and then going back behind the university, and then tying on in to Kansas Lane over there by the airport. So that'll be a pretty good northern loop, as we sort of want to call it. And so my responsibility, I believe, is a lot of people want to know what the state's doing with local problems, but our first responsibility should be is our state dollars ought to take care of our state problems that we have, whether it's roads, whether it's universities and those kinds